with stitches in his left hand. If he gets the stitches out and all is well, he might practice Thursday in Houston and play on Saturday. A good sign from a hospital bed that Connor Zilish is finding the humor in all this, tweeting a photo of his hospital bracelet that ironically reads "fall risk." Nothing funny, though, about what happened to the 19-year-old Charlotte native this weekend in Victory Lane. After capturing the Xfinity race at Watkins Glen, he took a spill out of his car. We won't even show it to you. Hard fall on the surface. Luckily, CT scans are clear. Did have a broken collarbone repaired this morning with a plate and screws. The rising star and series points leader speaking to Dirty Mo Media about it this week.
I mean, the last thing I remember, I was split on the door, so I had one leg in the car, one leg out the car, and the last thing I remember is thinking, I don't know why, but I thought I was going to break my femur. Like my leg was stuck. I thought I was going to get caught in the headrest, and just I thought I was done. Man. Like I thought I was done.
Scary stuff. Unclear when Zilish will be back in the race car. Meanwhile, preseason schedule out for the Hornets. It includes 0 games in Charlotte. Spectrum Center still wrapping up its second round of renovations. That should be done ahead of the regular season. Charlotte will play its home preseason games in Charleston and Greensboro this year. A surprising move in the last hour by Charlotte FC. After goalkeeper Christian Kalina's best game of the season, the club has now brought in a new goalkeeper. Tom Bogert of Give Me Sport reporting Charlotte have agreed to a deal with Inter Miami for Drake Callender. Callender recently faced some injuries and was benched himself in Miami, but has been one of the top keepers in MLS for several years. Kalina, though, reigning goalkeeper of the year, but has had an up-and-down season. To me, this is just a sign that this team is stacking all the talent it can now that it's put itself back in a position to make, hopefully, a deep playoff run. So, 2 talented keepers on the squad now.
Hoping to put it all together. That's going to be the secret sauce.
Yep.
All right, obviously, we do have the live weather impact for you coming up.
Yep, and live weather impact followed by live impact news. 7 o'clock to 9.
See you tonight at 11 as well. Tonight at 11, Charlotte voters are getting a front row seat with candidates asking questions about housing, transit, and neighborhood safety. How their answers could shape the city for years to come. WCNC Plus, stream now. Tonight on WCNC Charlotte at 11, Charlotte voters, they're getting to ask some questions for the future of Charlotte around transit, housing, and really neighborhood safety. We'll have,
Did you look up for a second at the beginning there?
I did. Tonight on WCNC Charlotte at 11, Charlotte voters are asking potential Charlotte leaders some very tough questions around transit, affordability and housing, and the safety of Charlotte.
Can we do one more just for me?
Sure. Tonight on WCNC Charlotte at 11, Charlotte voters are asking the future Charlotte leaders potential.
Pretty consistently expected to stay away from the United States. So let's get into the local forecast. Just like yesterday, we're going to briefly talk about Aaron, kind of talk about the generic things that you need to know, and then we'll bring in Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley from WFMY to talk a little bit more in depth about Aaron, more in depth about hurricanes and how they form, and a lot of cool developments in the forecast model world as we go through the next few months and most likely years, decades even. Okay, what's happening right now? Well, here's the current setup. You have satellite and radar, wide view here of the southeast. Yesterday, we had this little cold front that was situated, I just drew that upside down. This little cold front that was situated across the area. Well, now it has started to shift offshore, allowing for all of the heaviest rain, heaviest moisture to now be shifting away from the Carolinas. So whereas yesterday, we had rain and storms coming in from the south and pushing north. Now with the low moving, now we have storms coming in from the south and west and pushing northeast. And then tomorrow, it's going to be a different story and they'll be more consistent across the I-40 corridor. Does that look normal to you guys? Well, it should, because as the low moves away, the wind pattern changes, and that of course impacts where exactly the storm's set up. So let's talk about what's happening out there right now. We have a wide view here of Doppler radar. Lighter rain that moved through Richmond County and Chesterfield County earlier has started to move away, and now we are tracking a few areas of heavy rain, few thunderstorms, actually now pushing through Burke County and Caldwell County. Now, yes, there are pockets of heavy rain here. We have some lightning strikes as well, but it's not a ton of action, at least at this hour. Now, a little bit further south, we are also watching some light to moderate rain pushing into Chester County as well as York County. Again, this is nothing like what we had yesterday. It's nothing even like the rain this morning. This is just kind of the tail end of that moisture here on Tuesday. After this, we'll get a nice break. Wednesday's best chance of rain is morning to midday. And then we do see a drying out pattern. And speaking of, let's look at Futurecast. Here's Wednesday morning. Again, you can see most areas along and north of I-40 corridor with the best chance of rain. Now, I do think we'll have a few areas of rain between 40 and 85, but I just want to remind us that there's always a general area that we have a higher rain chance, right? Yesterday it was south of 85, today it was south and west of 85, and again tomorrow it'll be north and west of 85. And I know that technically I-85 is north to south, not west to east, but because of the way it's situated here in the Carolinas, it is a good reference point. You know if you live north and south of 85. James, do you live north or south of 85?
I live south of 85 where it never snows.
I'm going to write a book called It Never Ever Snows in Matthews, North Carolina.
It's true.
I don't know. Maybe it does. All right, back to the forecast. Okay, so Futurecast midday tomorrow. Again, you see a drying out pattern. We'll see more sunshine by the afternoon, and then eventually more typical summertime pattern both Thursday and Friday. And if you're like, what the heck do you mean by summertime pattern? Drier in the morning, few areas of patchy fog, and then storms popping up in the afternoon. But I think the more important thing is temperatures back near 90 degrees. I know Tim and I talked about this last night right here on WCNC Plus, but we have not seen temps at or above 90 since August 1st. So remember, we had a 17-day stretch of 90 plus. We got one break. Then we had a 26-day stretch. And now we haven't seen 90 in 11 days. But that's going to change by the end of the week. Before we talk about the warmer temperatures. Let's talk about futurecast rainfall. I don't think we're going to see a significant risk for flooding here. Additional rainfall totals at a maximum between about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch. Again, tomorrow morning, best chance to see heavy rain along and north of the I-40 corridor. Here are the temperatures. We finally dropped from an average high of 90 to an average high of 89, which means we're technically on a downward trend as we get closer to fall. But temperatures, again, are still expected to be warmer than they have been. We were below average for the majority of the first week and a half of August, and now we'll be shifting back closer to normal. Now, of course, again, we are going to talk more in depth about Aaron, so don't worry about that. But I do want to give an update on the current position, what's happening. Right now, Aaron still churning thousands of miles away from the Carolinas. Now, technically, if you're in California, it's even further away, but let's just talk Carolinas wise. It's about 2,700 to 2,900 miles away, depending on where you are. Now, if you think about that in semantics wise, that means that there's so much time that things can change. But again, as we talked about yesterday, what we do look for is consistency in trends and patterns, which so far we have had nicely. Now, before we talk about Aaron's current track, I do want to show you what's happening east of Aaron. So if the storm right now, I don't want to draw on a front on accident. So this is Aaron. Notice there's multiple tropical waves that are going to be moving off the coast of Africa over the next week and a half. So I don't want us to get too bogged down by Aaron, especially since we have pretty good agreement as of right now that it will likely take a trek, maybe not exactly where the trek is, but to northeast. I do want people to know that there are still many storms that will likely come afterward. That is not to be scary, it's just the reality of hurricane season, so we need to make sure we're not focusing in too much on one storm. Here's the latest forecast track for Aaron. The storm is still a tropical storm. Winds at 45 miles an hour. Is expected to become our first hurricane and eventually first major hurricane by this weekend. Now, we have not seen a hurricane, of course, so far this year. First hurricane, first major, pretty big deal, but the storm is still expected at some point to take a trek toward the north and northeast. By the end of this 5-day forecast cone, you can actually start right now to see that trek that's turning a little bit northerly, and that of course is because of that high pressure ridge that it's expected to eventually pull apart, allowing for a nice path for Aaron to trek toward the north. I do want to show you, I updated this during our main forecast on WCNC Charlotte, but I did put together a little headlines of what the current thoughts on Aaron were, because for people who maybe can't watch the entire show, just wanted you to have a good kind of grasp. So again, it's a tropical storm, thousands of miles away still from the United States. Will it become the first hurricane of the Atlantic hurricane season? Too early to know where it goes, but a curve out to sea is likely. When storms form this far out east, pretty good agreement that it eventually curves because of that same ridge of high pressure. Again, it's where the ridge is stronger, where the ridge is weaker, that determines when exactly that curve will happen. But as of right now, it is something our team is monitoring, but not something our team is worried about. And I think those are two distinct differences, right, between monitoring and watching versus something we're concerned about. So hourly forecast for tomorrow, best chance to see rain in the morning. That'll mainly be north of the I-40 corridor, north of I-85, and then we'll slowly, gradually increase sunshine by the afternoon. Monday's high temperature was 84, today's was 86, tomorrow's forecasting right around 88, so we're on that step ladder up to better weather by the weekend. Now, I do want to remind folks it is still going to be hot and humid, so better weather doesn't necessarily mean it feels comfortable outside, but I know we've seen tons of comments, tons of complaints about all the cool air, all the clouds, and so that is breaking down by the weekend. We'll have multiple days in the upper 80s to near 90, and even some drier air, which we don't get a ton of, really dry days this time of year, but 20 to 10% even chance for rain and storms both Saturday and Sunday, which of course Saturday is home match for the Charlotte FC, and the Knights are at home in a series starting today through Sunday. I'm going to leave this up for a few seconds, and we're going to bring in Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley from WFNY, so don't go anywhere.
Hello.
Hello.
Good to see you.
It's great to see you too. I like your purple tie.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I would say there's an occasion for it, but there's not. We're just same as yesterday, tracking rain and tracking tropics.
I will say I'm very glad that we do not have as much rain as yesterday, at least for us. We saw a lot of that heavy rain during our 5 and 6 o'clock newscast, but so far it was more of a morning, midday lull, and now we're seeing a few storms, mainly in the mountains though.
Yeah, it's the time of year that, we talk about this a lot. It's just frustrating to be able to pinpoint exact hour of the day where it might be raining. So any advice for tomorrow or even into Thursday is just, you leave home without the rain gear, you're at risk of getting wet. So just keep it with you. There could be that rain shower at any time tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, same thing for Thursday. It's kind of the same for the whole Carolinas, it seems, until we kind of change that pattern into the weekend. I saw your rain chances are going down. Ours are too. I'm pretty optimistic for a good old-fashioned summer weekend by Saturday, it seems.
Do you have any fun plans, Tim Buckley, for this weekend? That's what I want to know.
Well, if it's nice enough, I kind of want to go to the beach. But if it's not, or if there's a storm on the way, maybe not. But I'm optimistic that both of those things will be fine. So we'll see where I end up.
My mom always said that was cautious optimism. So I always say we're cautiously optimistic about X, Y, Z. So.
That's right. And
Okay,
lots to talk about, especially with the tropic, our Erin is kind of the topic that we've spent the most time chatting with each other about. So without further ado, you want to get into Erin here today?
Yeah, let's talk about Erin.
So Erin, as far as we've been tracking, and you mentioned it in your forecast here, there's not been a whole lot of change between yesterday when it formed and today, which I guess we could call day 2. For Erin, the track is a little different, but still basically the same. The intensity is also about the same, and I think, what we're noticing today is that it's kind of getting held back a little bit, right, on the intensity side of things.
Yeah, I actually updated our tropical intensity map, and so I'm going to pop it up here. I did not have it ready to go, but come on, update. But we didn't expect, I don't think, Erin to be such a lower end tropical storm for so many more days. But it does look like that Saharan dust might be at least drying out some of that moisture, at least in the near term. Maybe not in the long term, though.
Yeah, and for those that might not know or just might not have it committed to memory, what do we mean when we say Saharan dust? Well, it's really what it sounds like. With hurricanes, they can be affected by dust and dry air that comes off the continent of Africa. The Sahara Desert is obviously over that way, and you get wind that blows off of it, and these plumes of drier air can migrate into the Atlantic Ocean. So I have it pulled up right here. The little red dot, of course, that's Erin. Look at how much, and you're looking for the brownish color here, that tan shade. All of this is really dry air. And so ahead of it, it's got to battle it. And it's kind of like, kryptonite for these storms a lot of times, Brittany. If they ingest this and they absorb it, it's getting into the engine of the system, and they can kind of get infected, and they really can't strengthen that well with all that dry air around.
Yeah, of course, the big things that we need in order for hurricanes to form is we need tons of moisture, right? Storms that are previously present. We need a lot of moisture from the warm air in the tropical Atlantic basin. So, of course, temps at or above 80 degrees. And then you need to not encounter dry air. You need to not encounter wind shear. And you also need to really not encounter any cold areas. Now, I do think when it comes to the water temperatures, we're probably going to be pretty good for a while because there haven't been a lot of storms that have developed recently, which means that the Atlantic basin is at or above average. But something that I do think that we will also start to see Erin battling a little bit, at least in the near term, is some higher wind shear. Right now, it's a very, very favorable development. Remember, wind shear essentially rips storms apart at their core. When you have a tornado setup, you actually want wind shear because you want winds changing with speed and direction with height. That also allows for storms to tilt and move. However, think tornadoes, right? They're like this, but hurricanes are like this. They're flat. So when they move across the Atlantic basin, any kind of wind can tear them apart and disrupt their center of circulation. But in the long term, we are going to see that track kind of encounter some of that wind shear as we get closer to the end of the week. So it's going to be battling those two things. I think the tropical, moisture because of the warm temperatures are going to be helping Erin. So we kind of are balancing things out, I think, over the next few days when it comes to impacts on weakening and or strengthening of the storm.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. All of these are factors that can either destroy a storm sometimes if they're strong enough, but more often they might just hold it back a little bit. We've already got a well-formed low-pressure center, so probably pretty unlikely at this point that it falls apart, but what it might do is it just kind of keeps it level for a couple of days, and that's kind of what the Hurricane Center forecast does. It keeps it a tropical storm until it gets closer to those islands, and well, then it shoots it right up, and that's what we want to watch later on in the week.
I also do want to make sure people know again that we are not trying to say that we know 100% of what's going to happen with Aaron right now. There's still a lot of time to watch it, but when we look at the long range, steering currents, there is pretty good agreement that a trek toward the north and northeast eventually happens. It's going to be more so when that happens. As we talked about yesterday, a stronger Bermuda high could mean closer to the U.S. If it weakens quicker, it could mean a little bit further away. So I'm not, at least right now, Tim, too worried about our coastline. I do think maybe a rip current risk unless something drastically changes, but I think where it could get a little bit dicey is our New England states, at least based on right now, because if that gets a little bit closer, even just by a couple miles, we could see at least, maybe not a direct hit or anything like that, but could definitely see maybe some storm surge near those coastal spots.
Yeah, and as we know, especially with the fragility of our coastlines and particularly the Outer Banks, it doesn't take that much to cause some damage, and a lot of places get flooded on high tides with full moons, and so certainly if we have higher rip currents and higher waves and surges and surfs like that, even with a storm that's a couple hundred miles offshore, if that were to be the case, you could still have some of those impacts. So it remains to be seen, but it's good to emphasize the uncertainty. We don't know exactly where the storm will track, but all of these tracks on the map mostly agree of an offshore path. We did want to mention how this year, though, there are some new tools that we have in the toolbox that are kind of new to us as meteorologists as well. Typically, we use these computer models that are based off of physics and use the science of the atmosphere and all these equations to simulate how hurricanes would work and how the weather works. That's what we've always been using, and it works pretty well. But this year, I'm going to pop up some new tools and just kind of show you a behind-the-scenes look. This is actually a coordination between Google and NOAA. They have some new models and new tools that they've debuted this year that are actually using artificial intelligence. So this is one of their experimental models right now, which, again, we've not used this for several years. We can't really vouch for its accuracy. But what we're looking at, this is an artificial intelligence model kind of simulating the track of Aaron through the next several days. So this is what it's thinking for next Monday. All of those little dots are possible locations for it to be. There's the Carolinas and Bermuda, and that would be next Wednesday and Thursday. You can view it in another way, just like we do our normal spaghetti models. And Brittany, what I think is interesting is, we're using different tools here. That's the AI version, and here's the traditional version. Well, they're both pretty similar. So to me, it almost gives me more confidence, I guess, that we're having these new tools, and yet it seems like they are kind of agreeing with the old ones. So anytime we have some agreement, that would boost your confidence a little bit that, hey, we are thinking about this the right way. That seems to be right.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but consistency with trends and patterns when it comes to the models as well will be helpful. You never like a hurricane season where you have a storm that's jotting back and forth, constantly. So that's a good sign as well. I do want to emphasize the fact that artificial intelligence really is only as good, right, as the forecasters who are programming it and things like that. And I know when that AI model first came out, Brad actually went back and looked at the data using Helene as an example, and really the National Hurricane Center's forecast actually still beat out any of the other forecasts. So at the end of the day, it's another tool, but it's not something that, because it's public, we want people going crazy online, posting every single run update, because that's how misinformation gets spread. So again, remember, it's a tool, it's guidance, not gospel.
And the hurricane cone put out by the Hurricane Center beats almost every model very consistently. They do that for a reason. They are the experts for a reason, and it's also only 5 days out, which that's for a reason too. Part of the data they use to program these AI models, though, is history, using past storms and positions and all these other things, probabilities. Something I thought was interesting to do is just to take where Erin is right now, which is, I didn't fancy label this, but basically X marks the spot, where all these tracks converge in the middle of the ocean right about here. That's where Erin is currently located. So what I did is I plotted, using our system, show me every storm within 100 miles of that point, going back to like the 1950s. And since then, you can see the vast majority of them have squiggled their way out to sea one way or another. When we say vast majority, I don't even really want to mention that there are a couple of examples here that are the exception, but one of them is Hurricane Florence, which we know plenty about. The other one here is actually Hurricane Ike, which was one that followed Katrina about a month later, I guess, or a couple weeks later. But either way, most of those storms in the position of where Erin is right now have moved out to sea, and that's just all it's doing is looking at history. It's not looking at anything with the current weather pattern. I'm not saying that's what'll happen, but it's something else to look at.
Yeah, you always, again, it's a tool. It's a tool, and it's something interesting to go back and look at, because we can also look at what happened after the storm. Even if it wasn't a huge impact, was there significant upwelling? Does that mean that a storm that comes behind it could have lesser, warm ocean water temperatures to work with? I remember back in 2017 when we had Maria and Jose kind of back-to-back storms. Even though Maria was horrible, a lot of those storms that came after, because it was such a strong storm, kind of fell apart immediately because of all the upwelling and all the cold water. So again, just an interesting thing to look at. Are we wanting to go to Chris's story about how a hurricane forms, just in case people are curious about that?
Sounds good, Brittany.
Hurricane season ends on November 30th and peaks September 10th. But for them to form, conditions have to line up, and the better they do, the stronger they become. Let's raise your hurricane IQ. Let's make a hurricane. Here are the basic ingredients you need. 1. A pre-existing weather pattern. 2. Surface water temperatures of 80 degrees Fahrenheit or warmer. 3. A low wind shear environment. And 4. The atmosphere has to be juiced up with a lot of moisture. Okay, let's make a hurricane. Over warm waters, rising moisture condenses into cold air, forming multiple thunderstorms. This flow left undisturbed will eventually start to rotate into a low pressure system due to the spin of the earth. More air rushes in and more thunderstorms release heat and power into the storm. When the circulation becomes a closed low with a well-defined center, the storm officially is a tropical cyclone. When maximum surface winds are 38 miles per hour or less, it'll be numbered as a tropical depression. Winds of 39 to 73 miles per hour are tropical storm strength. At this point, a storm gets a name. Once winds within a storm reach 74 miles per hour, a hurricane is born. This is the ideal structure of a hurricane. Too much wind shear will disrupt the formation. The faster these warm core storms will spin, the more likely the eye wall will form. The strength of a hurricane is measured using the Saffir-Simpson scale. Category 3 or greater is classified as a major hurricane, causing devastating and catastrophic damage. All tropical cyclones, regardless of wind speeds, can bring an extensive amount of rainfall and flooding, especially the slower they move. With WCNC Charlotte, I'm meteorologist Chris Mulcahy. We're now all a little bit more weather-wise.
Color bars. James, what did you do to us?
Chris didn't leave me any pad on that package, apparently.
You definitely didn't.
May I introduce the next topic?
You can do whatever you want.
I can do whatever
You're
I
the
want.
producer of this
Next
show,
topic,
James.
I can just take over the whole show right now.
Yeah.
Well,
Bye.
there's a crazy story out of
It's a
Nebraska,
takeover.
About the strength of winds. And I thought maybe we'd share this with our viewers and then discuss it on the other side.
Ferocious winds hammering the state's oldest prison on Saturday.
It kind of peeled a lot of the roof off
2 dormitory-style housing units caught in the tempest.
and then caused water damage inside too, so they're not habitable right now.
That left 387 incarcerated people in need of a place to stay and forced the Nebraska Department of Correctional Service to spring its emergency plan into action. DCS Director Rob Jeffries said in a statement on Sunday, in part, quote, "In corrections, we train for the unexpected. The team at NSP and across NDCS came together quickly and immediately worked to make sure everyone was safe during and after this natural disaster."
During the COVID pandemic, the department became really creative at using space and adapting to changing situations.
Doug Kobernick is the Inspector General for Corrections, basically the state's prison watchdog. He says it could have been worse if not for the prison population recently flatlining due to what Kobernick says is an uptick in grantings of parole.
If you look at where we were headed as far as population, if we had been at where it was predicted we would be at, there wouldn't have that extra space around there, probably. So we're very fortunate that it's been stable.
250 of those incarcerated people are staying here at NSP in a gymnasium and other facilities. The other 137 were split between the Omaha Correctional Center and the Tecumseh State Correctional Institution. NDCS now working through damage assessments and repairs, which could take at least a month.
That takes that gym out of commission for recreational activities for the rest of the population. But then you also have this new population that you have to feed them somewhere, you have to rearrange schedules. So it impacts everybody.
This is a pretty crazy video.
It kind of reminds me of yesterday, not wind-wise, but the Charleston driving. It's like, I think that we see more pictures and videos like this because people have one of these, in their hand all the time. But it's cool to see, but it's just a reminder of how strong wind is. And we know here in the Carolinas, we talk about it all the time, 90% of our storm damage comes from wind. So it's no joke, no matter where it comes from.
Not a joke at all, and that's a huge impact over there, a big facility like that. Gosh, just kind of scary to see, and it does make you hopefully respect those warnings whenever you get one, not just for tornadoes, but for the severe thunderstorms as well. Our weather lately just been kind of gloomy and wet, so thankfully we haven't had too much of that in the last couple of weeks.
Yes, I'm very much hoping that we'll see lesser, wind and storm impacts like that for the rest of the summer and heading into fall, since our worst severe weather season, is in the spring, but that doesn't mean we can't get anything else. I did want to really quickly touch on one of our viewer questions we got, just because it's an easy one to answer. Someone asked yesterday, Tim, about are we more concerned about tropical systems that develop close to the U.S. or far out? I think that the answer to this is it could be either or. The reason why we probably are a little bit more honed in on close to the U.S. is just because of the close proximity.
The closer they are, the more likely they are to hit, but the farther away they are, the stronger they can get before they hit you. And the big ones for us usually form pretty far away.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us for Live Weather Impact on WCNC Plus and WFMY Plus. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. Bye, Tim. Have a good night.